His reviews will get you further than the film will ever go. If you give him just a moment of your time, he'll let you know which movies rock, which movies stink, which movies shouldn't have been released. Say hello to Confused Matthew.
Wow. This was a good one. Also very hard to review. Life is Beautiful is an Italian film that was released in 1997 to a lot of critical acclaim, as well as a lot of controversy surrounding it. I think there might be a few people out there who might actually be offended by this film in a way, and while I might be able to understand why to a point, I don't really feel that way about it at all. What we have here is a very original story, and it doesn't seem like that at first. The first half of this film introduces us to Guido, an extremely charismatic and optimistic person who seems to be able to put a good spin on any situation. Guido is an amazing character. I know he's played by an actor, but that actor gave such an amazing performance that I can't see him being anyone else but him. Guido is one of the most ingenuous, charismatic people I have ever gotten to know in a film. It's impossible not to love this man. Even in the worst of circumstances, this guy spreads love and laughter wherever he goes. Through happenstance, he keeps running into the same woman and soon falls for her. But it later turns out that this woman is involved with someone that he royally pissed off. So you would think that this would turn into a typical story of a nice woman marrying a jerk and falling for the nice guy. But this is a little bit different. There isn't much conflict between Guido and the jerk she will eventually be engaged to, mostly because Guido works hard to avoid him most of the first half of the film. This part of the film mainly focuses on the main character doing everything he can to win the girl over. They are just throwing a couple together here and making them fall in love. Guido is working for this, and he's winning her over simply by being himself. His charisma and charm rubs off on her, and she soon starts to fall for him as well. Watching this character take different circumstances and use them to win her heart is wonderful. Through this whole affair, Guido refers to himself as a prince, because that's how this guy sees his life. He doesn't have much, but he still feels rich. And he refers to his new love as a princess, because that is absolutely how he sees her. If you didn't know where this movie was going, which I really didn't, you would think that this was simply a love story in the traditions of Shakespeare and Puccini. But it's not. It's really, really not. The love story actually ends at about the first hour, with an hour of the film yet to go. Guido and his new wife now have a son, a business, and a happy life together. Having no idea what this movie was about going in, I was like, wow, they wrapped it up in the middle. Where could they possibly go with this now? Well, here's what happens. With this family living happily ever after, Guido and his son are out on the town one day when they are captured by Nazis and thrown into a concentration camp. What? Oh my god! Now, here's where the genius of this film comes in. Guido and his son are captured and held against their will, with no hope of ever seeing their home again. What does Guido do? He does exactly what he's done his whole life. He takes the circumstances around him and uses them to his advantage. In order to protect his son, he convinces him that the whole thing is just a game, that they're really in a contest to win a big prize, and since his son is into toy tanks, he tells him that the first prize is an actual tank that will be his as long as he plays by the rules. Through the rest of the film, Guido, with the help of his fellow prisoners, does everything in his power to keep up the ruse. For example, he convinces one of the German guards that he is a translator, and as the guard explains the rules of the camp to everyone in German, Guido makes it sound like he's explaining the rules of the game. Things like that. That is one of the most original ideas for a story I have ever heard of. God, how do you even think of something like that? The situation is heartfelt and obviously sad at the same time. The twists and turns this leads to with Guido trying to keep up the ruse is nail-biting at times, and I have rarely been so invested in a story in all my life. The film keeps you in a contradictory state of optimism and sadness at the same time, as Guido loses hope but must find a way to keep it up for the sake of his son, as he reaches out any way he can to his wife as they are both separated and may never see each other again. This is not a realistic portrayal of the Holocaust, obviously, but it is one of the most heartfelt and human stories I've seen in a long time. Now, here's the downside for some. There are some who criticize this film heavily for making light of concentration camps, and in truth, this film doesn't really explore the horror or reality of that subject matter, but that's exactly the point. What I think those critics don't understand is that this is not making light of that subject matter because it's not about the Holocaust at all. Guido has to make light of the situation for the sake of his boy. There are all kinds of good films that do explore that subject in its full horrible terror, and anyone who wants to learn about that can always watch one of those movies. But Life is Beautiful isn't about that. It's about this guy trying to protect his son. I never knew what was going to happen next in the story. I never knew if they were all going to get out alive or if the movie was going to forsake them. I never knew if Guido's story was going to be blown out of the water at any moment. All I knew is that I loved this family and I wanted to see them survive. I won't give away the ending, but I will say that I got really choked up in the end. I really did. The movie just worked for me. The very fact that they named this film Life is Beautiful when it deals with a family in a concentration camp should give you a clue as to how bittersweet this is, but it does its job masterfully. I was psychologically and emotionally engaged at every moment, right to the end. It's one of the most original ideas for a film that I've ever seen, and it comes very close to genius. No, this is not a realistic portrayal of the Holocaust, but it's not supposed to be. What this is about is a man taking the worst of situations and turning it into something positive for the sake of his child. I personally think it was a great movie, and it was my privilege to watch this.